Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Lucy Heavens, and welcome to CMO Therapy, a podcast that's hopefully going to help you navigate your way through your marketing journey. Because let me tell you, I get it. Being a marketing leader is no walk in the park. In each episode, we dive headfirst into the world of marketing, where uncertainty, tight budgets, and fierce competition are just the beginning of the rollercoaster ride. But guess what? You are not alone in this. Why go solo when you can tap into the powerhouse of insights from some of the most awesome marketing leaders in the game? And look, the title might include the word therapy, but we are not just talking about challenges here. We are tackling them head on. So join us as we deep dive into the nitty gritty, share war stories, and unlock secret strategies. And get ready for no holds barred conversations because sometimes I have no filter. So if you are a chief marketing officer, a marketing lead, or someone just looking to up their marketing game, then I am so glad that you are here with us today. So today I am very, very pleased to have with me the very amazing Emma Westley. Emma, can you give a quick intro?
Will do. Thank you, Lucy. And thank you for having me on this amazing podcast. I've been listening to it recently and love all the episodes so far. So I'm excited to get into this one. So yeah, my name's Emma Westley. I'm currently VP of Marketing for a US scale-up called DCX. And I've got about 20 years experience in pretty much 100% B2B marketing. I started off agency side, then went client side, then back to agency, then back to client, so flip-flopped. But did sort of about 15 years enterprise marketing, so for big companies like HP, Cisco, Symantec. And then the past sort of 7-ish years, a bit more, I've actually been working in startups and scale-ups, again, all in B2B. But yeah, much preferring actually the startup scale-up environment now. A lot faster, a lot more exciting. And yeah, excited to get into this podcast and discuss all things attribution, I believe.
Attribution. Yeah, you've just said the word. Literally, it gives me shivers every time I hear it. Shivers down the spine. But yeah, absolutely right. So we are going to be talking about attribution today. The title of the podcast is Attribution Chaos, which I think is quite apt. Are marketers their own worst enemy? And I'm listening to your background as well. I think it's going to be really interesting to hear that mix that you've got of the kind of the agency and the client side and how that plays into the attribution story. So yeah, let's dig into this. Let's jump straight in because I'm really, really excited and there's so much to talk to around this topic. So okay, I'll start off with actually like on the therapy angle, I suppose. You can, for a little bit of therapy for me, you can help me with. And that is that whenever there's an attribution conversation with somebody outside of marketing, it's always that, wow, it's easy, right? Where did the leads come from? Where, we just track them back. There's always, it doesn't have to be exact. And we can just, easily make up these numbers. And oh my goodness, yeah. Yet for us, it's that one big giant headache. Why do you think there's such a perception that it is easy, first of all?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, I think you definitely hit the nail on the head with, it's just so easy. It's like everything in marketing, it's just so easy. And to be fair, I think, going back to the title of this session, we are our own worst enemy as marketers because we are also guilty of giving that impression a lot of the time that things are easy. We'll very quickly sort of jump on shiny new objects, new tools. Oh yeah, that looks amazing. It looks easy. Let's just try it out. So there's a lot going into that. I think if you take a psychology stance on it, there's what's known as simplicity bias. So humans the world over just oversimplify things. So we're always going to think of things in simplistic terms, and that's just a natural thing to do in order for us to make sense of the chaos in life generally. So yeah, there's that, first of all, is like jumping on that sort of simplicity bias. There's also, and this, I'm sorry, this is going to be a bit of a rant, but the fact that a lot of software vendors, especially in this attribution space, which accommodates like analytics, data, all of that sort of stuff, so not just attribution, but they have really sold us this dream of, oh, it is just this easy. You know, I was looking actually yesterday, did a quick Google search, found a couple of attribution software platforms, and they sound sort of so idyllic. You know, you look through their websites and you read the copy and it's brilliant. It's like, you know,
Solving your dreams.
yeah, we're going to solve these problems for you. We're going to give you the intelligence you need and, you know, drive these results and optimize this for you and forecast that for you. And it all sounds brilliant. But I think a lot of us have now been burned. We've tried these software tools, we've tried these platforms, and they're not that easy. They take a heck of a lot of work going into them. They don't always give us the results and the you know, the promises that we're given. So yeah, I think there is that sort of, again, a simplicity angle, but a lot of what we're sold is this dream of, you know, yeah, it's so easy to do this and to track this and track that, and yeah, being able to get to that sort of holy grail of understanding what has led to sales, conversions, closed deals, even leads is brilliant. Like, who wouldn't want that? It's
what's your reaction to leadership when you do get that that question or that statement? How do you kind of respond to that? Because it sounds like, and I think you're so right. It sounds like, you know, maybe it's not entirely their fault. You know, they've got the outside pressures of these other software companies and other people kind of saying to them, you know, oh, well, it's easy, and they're just almost like replaying that back to you. So, you know, how would you kind of respond in that as a marketing leader?
So I think the first thing is just remember that the other person that you're speaking to, the CEO, for example, is just human. They're not superhuman. They're just another human being that you can have a normal conversation with, or try at least to have a normal conversation with them. And so explain that to them, you know, explain exactly what's going on. So if my CEO was to say, well, yeah, what's contributed to this deal? Like I'll literally say, well, okay, it looks like, you know, these 3 or 4 activities have been the main contributors. So, you know, we met them at an event, we took them through a few emails, the sales team like phoned on them as well or called on them. But they also, you know, from like what we can see in HubSpot, for example, we can see that they've looked at these pages, this content, blah, blah, blah. So actually it's a host of different things that have contributed to it. So not just 1 or 2 things. And, you know, if you've done your planning correctly, if you've done your strategy and you've worked out, okay, these are the personas we're trying to target, these are the channels we're going to use, you can go back to that and say something like, this is the hypothesis that we had, was that this amalgamation of channels would work and get this person to this stage or whatever. But yeah, it's not just 1 or 2 things. And also it could have been 10 more things, because we're not in the pocket of this person. We're not tracking absolutely everything they're doing. We're not hearing every conversation they have with their peers or, you know, people in other communities they're in. So yeah, like the best picture we have is this, and it was a bunch of different things contributed. But yeah, it's never going to be 100%. And that is
so true. It's like you almost want to stick a GoPro on them, don't you? On your prospects. Where have you been? Who have you talked to? What are those conversations? What did you have a look at? I mean, at best, you know, we can kind of add that, you know, as they call it, the self-attribution sort of method into that at the very beginning when they do come kind of inbound, because they're the ones that always kind of, really great in one respect to have those kind of inbound bluebirds or whatever, but in another way it's a bit tough because we can't always tell where they came from. It just looks like it came from a Google search, but obviously they've seen us at an event or they've seen a billboard somewhere or whatever. And the self-attribution is quite good because it is actually saying to them, where did you hear about us? But even then, that I suppose it's just relying on their memory, right?
Yeah, and actually, Lucy, you've just hit on something that I'm sorry, but I'm
I
gonna
can
go.
see it in your face.
I'm gonna go deep on this one. So yeah, self-reported attribution is a massive thing now. A lot of it's been driven by Chris Walker, who a lot of people will know from his social content that he does, and he's brilliant. His thinking behind attribution is brilliant. His, the data that he's got behind it is brilliant. And yeah, self-reported attribution is maybe not the best that we can get to, but it does help, especially in B2B when you've got lots and lots of channels, lots of different people potentially involved in a decision-making sort of committee. But yes, it does rely on memory, and it's a minefield actually if you look into this. So there is a brilliant book that I would recommend every marketer reads. It's called The Memory Illusion by someone called Dr. Julia Shaw. If you don't like reading, then go and listen to her TED Talk. That's just as accessible. But the book is brilliant, and it talks about exactly that, the memory illusion, that actually our memories are not as reliable as we think they are. Now, I'm going to actually read from the book a little bit because I can't do it justice without sort of explaining some of it. So it talks about lots and lots of different studies that have been done about memory. So there's this one in 2013. Iowa State University conducted a series of experiments demonstrating that every time an experience stored in what's called long-term memory was recalled by participants, it's something called encoding and storage is happening in your brain, in your memory. But in one of these studies, they showed participants a video of a fictional terrorist attack. They then asked them to recall what happened. After the participants recalled the memory, they were then given misinformation. And when they correctly recalled that the terrorist had used a hypodermic needle on a flight attendant, this is part of the story, they were incorrectly told that the terrorist had used a stun gun. Now here's the crux. When later asked to recall the event once more, participants recalled the incorrect information and were unable to recall the actual event, the correct event detail. And the researchers claimed that this meant the new information had actually replaced the original memory. So, and read the book, there's a bunch of studies that are done around this. There's also a bunch of examples given around the justice process. So, like basically police or investigators implanting incorrect memories into people they're interviewing. If anybody again has seen the Netflix series Making a Murderer, will know that it's basically rife. This whole idea of like, it's not fake memories, it's just the fact that our brains recall memories slightly differently each time we're recalling them, or we're subject to other people sort of influencing them. So bringing it back to marketing and bringing it back to self-reported attribution, we do have to be careful about that. If you're asking people on a forum, where did you hear about our product or our service, they may be misremembering. You can't rely 100% on what they're saying, because if they've seen 10 different ads or 20 different, instances of your brand, or maybe they're confusing a competitor's brand with yours, or they're confusing Instagram with Facebook. Like I've done that myself number of times. You can't rely on that 100%.
There's also the, like, you've really made me think about this. There's also the kind of the way that you pose that question, because how did you hear about us is very different to how did you find us. And I see those kind of used interchangeably. So, for example, like, how did you find us? Could be, well, I Google searched your brand, but how did I hear about you? Well, I saw you at an event, or somebody told me about, you and your brand, or your brand and your product. So I Google searched you. You're going to get very different there's very different attribution there, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's
It's,
really interesting.
I mean, there's a whole world of psychology and neuroscience that you can study around this. But yeah, I do come back to, though, it is the best we can do in a lot of instances. So if the best we could do is self-reported, get a general idea of where a customer has heard about us or heard about the brand, then yeah, let's use that. Let's move on. Let's not like overanalyze or get hung up on, oh, but it could have been this or it could have been that. Yeah.
The ones I tend to pick out of it actually is like it's the referral, like I heard about you from a friend or a colleague or something. Those are the ones to me that are most kind of interesting. The others, I think I agree. But you've opened up a little bit of a can of worms now, because if that's a kind of whole memory thing, that's so interesting. And if we apply that then backwards in our own like marketing teams, when it comes to attribution, do you think there's what am I trying to say? Do you think there's that element of like, well, I know that these webinars are doing particularly well, so when I'm going to kind of build out those attribution reports, am I going to place more emphasis or like credit, over credit certain channels like webinars, for instance, because I sort of personally feel like they're the things that are bringing us the most leads. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's always going to be our own biases. I like my job at the moment, for example, our company are targeting very like traditional industries. So what you call like old economy industries, manufacturing, construction, those sorts of industries. And in the past, I've been sort of, in SaaS or software. And honestly, it feels like two different worlds sometimes. And I think the key there is sort of stepping back and thinking, trying to take your own bias out of it. Because if I was to put myself in my software marketing brain, I could say, well, yes, it's, the most important channels are going to be like, social media, or the big one at the moment, communities, like online communities, or Slack groups, or that sort of thing. But then when I come back to my my job at the moment and think, well, no, that doesn't apply the same way, like to those sorts of people. So you've got to, I think a lot of it just comes from experience, and also just clarity of thought, and like that sort of stepping back and thinking, well, hold on a minute, don't put your own bias on it, and just think about the customer, put yourself in their shoes, and what are they going to be interested in, and yeah, then focus your channels, your marketing activities on those things, as opposed to possibly a lot of the noise that you hear at the moment. And again, going back to a lot of the vendors that sell us these platforms, they're always going to have their own agendas. So if they're pushing, yes, you've got to do a lot of performance marketing because this is how you're going to track everything. Oh, and surprise, surprise, this is where our software comes in. Just step back from it and think, well, hold on a minute. Is that applicable to what I'm doing? Is it actually going to help? So yeah, that would be the best bit of advice, is just sort of, step away from it and try and think without the biases and without all the noise that you've got going on.
It's funny, isn't it? Again, like I was saying about kind of marketers not being like particularly great at doing our own marketing. Sort of sometimes we were talking about that earlier, but Like, I think even being a subject of marketing, like I went into Costa the other day to, oh, am I allowed to say brands? Or other coffee chains are available. But I went in to buy a coffee the other day, and I was in my head, I was saying, like, you don't want a cake, you don't want a cake, you don't want a cake. And then the guy said to me, oh, can I interest you in a cinnamon bun? And I just went, yep, okay, thank you, that'd be great. Like, oh my goodness, I've just been upsold, and normally I should be picking up those signals, but yeah, that's really really interesting. But I think, like, yeah, has there been a time then? I love what you were just saying about because sorry, go back to the start. What you said is very, very key about looking at the data as well. So, like, you can force yourself not to be biased over certain channels. Another way is to obviously look at the data, right? And the data that you've got, because that tells a thousand pictures. But has there been a time where maybe you've been new to an organization, but you have seen that kind of like bias? Maybe it's you, maybe it was kind of from your team, maybe from the rest of the organization on a particular channel, and therefore the kind of the attribution was was a bit inaccurate. Have you had an example of that?
Oh gosh, yes, probably loads that I could think of. Certainly the company I'm with at the moment really did have to sort of rethink what sort of audiences we were going after, and yeah, what were the channels. But in the past as well, especially when it comes to attribution, when I worked agency side years ago, we were trying to put together an attribution model, multi-touch attribution model for a big tech company. And it just the exercise in itself of trying to build this bloody thing, it took so long. It never saw the light of day because it just took so long to actually do. And we had so many resources, there were resources in the client company, a lot of resources in the agency that I was working in at the time. And we put so much time and effort into building this thing. And it was never good enough. We never actually got the model built because it was just too complicated. We were chasing data that either wasn't available or it wasn't accurate enough. Lots of data silos obviously sitting across the organization as well. It was a big global tech company, so typical sort of data silos everywhere. And I think that was the point at which I just sort of thought, this is just a fool's errand, this whole attribution thing, because it took so much time, so much effort, and we just didn't get anywhere. The other thing, just talking about data, that we're really bad at in marketing is making sure that we've got enough data, especially in B2B. We can quite often attribute things to or attribute results to things that are not statistically significant enough. So, and I know this goes into like an area that you could argue, well, do we really need to know about that? But I think you have to have a little bit of awareness of it at least, because if you're doing an A/B test on an email subject line, for example, and it comes out that subject line A has worked better than B, well, is it actually statistically significant? Like, did you actually send enough emails in the first place? Did your results show enough of a variance? If you want to get into it, you can go down the road of going into Excel and doing your forest plotting and everything to actually see if this is statistically significant enough. But even at a high level, just sort of think, have we got enough data there? So yeah, I think there's that balance of like, what are you attributing, but also what sort of data have you got? Is it enough, and is it the right sort of data? All that said, though, like, I do very much believe in a bit of common sense, well, a lot of common sense marketing, which is, if your data shows you a good enough picture, then use that, and then use a common sense for the rest of it. Use your experience, use your talking to other people, talking to other people in the business and outside the business, and use that sort of full picture to then inform what you're going to do next. Don't get hung up on the data. Don't get hung up on attribution. Use it to give you enough of a steer, and then use your common sense to do the rest. I don't know if you'd agree.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's so true. A lot of people sort of almost are looking for the at the data to give you the like 100% answer. Like this is the right thing to do. Like, Lucy, well done. Yes, this is working 100%. Like, it's never going to kind of tell you that. What it's always going to do is give you a signpost or a steer. And like I remember, and it's similar to what you were saying at the start about mapping out that journey. I remember with this one organization, we didn't have a lot of data. Like we just didn't. The systems were quite new, and we just started collecting the data, and it was all kind of very manual. We didn't have the budget to get these sort of fancy attribution systems, but we literally just started on like a Miro board, mapping out that journey. Like you said, here's kind of all the touch points. And as we started doing that, and we were looking through all of the deals that were making it through to the, into the pipeline, so all of the really good, the good deals, the successful ones. And we noticed that there was kind of like this trend that everybody that was coming onto the website and downloading the product brochure, for example, very, very quickly, the length of the deal, then the number of days that it took for it to convert then into like a sales qualified lead and then into a pipeline deal, it was so much quicker and so much better like quality, just because they were downloading this product brochure. We're like, so how can we drive more people to download the product brochure? So it wasn't like that kind of like hurrah moment, like with attribution point of view, we know it's that kind of what we're doing with that product brochure that's the right thing. It then just almost like it's just that signpost into then, okay, well, what campaigns can we do? What strategy can we put in place to accelerate that to bring us the good leads?
And funny you should say product brochure, because if you were to go on to certain social platforms at the moment, you would believe that sort of thing, brochures are dead, email is dead, everything, and actually, it all comes down to the audience that you're targeting. But as you've just said, like a product brochure, like that's
exactly,
blast from the past, but these things do still work in certain circumstances.
It goes back to that bias, doesn't it? Like you said, we all like to think that it is that the building of the communities, or it's the LinkedIn or whatever that's working, but actually but it's all a journey, isn't it? It's all kind of a bit of a journey, and this is the bit that again that scares me, and it sends the shivers down my spine about is it the kind of the art or the science? People are always trying to put it into one bucket or the other, right? But should we do you think then, are we, where we're getting to with this conversation, are we saying that it is a mixture of both, and should we just kind of accept that there is that arty bit that we just talked about, which was like plotting that journey and just really sort of looking at it almost more from a picture, kind of a bigger picture point of view, than rather just putting a load of numbers into a spreadsheet? Or is it a combination of both?
As much as everybody will want that extreme point of view at the moment, because that's what sells and that's what gets the clicks. Yes, it is a balance. It's not one or the other. It's use your data to get enough science, and then use your mapping, or use your experience, or use good old fashioned brainstorming, get everyone in a room and brainstorm things, or a lot of like working over the years with a lot of creatives. The other thing that I've noticed is sometimes these ideas, that sort of art, they just appear. You can't push them. You could be at the gym one day and you have the best idea, or you could be out on a walk, or you could be sat at your desk and doing something completely different, and then all of a sudden you think about that thing that you were talking about yesterday and you go, I know what it is, I've got it. And if I go back to the neuroscience, there are lots of reasons for that happening. There are like lots of synaptic connections happening in the brain for no reason whatsoever, that just spur these ideas, this art, this creativity. And so, yeah, you've got to just allow time for that to happen. And it could come from the strangest of places, the strangest of, the people that you don't expect it to come from either. But yeah, use the data to get enough science, and then give your ideas time to percolate, or put them out there for other people to give you other ideas, and then yeah, just give it a bit of time to sort of come up with the art side of it. And yeah, unfortunately, a lot of it does come from experience too. If you have done something before and it's not worked, or it has worked, and how you can do it differently in the future. Yeah, it's the balance. It's not one or the other. It's a bit like, I saw a post the other day from, I can't remember who it was, but he was basically saying, it was another a software company marketing VP, and he was saying that he'd come to the realization that attribution, or the things that produce results in marketing, i.e. leads and conversions and deals, is the actual combination of things together. So, and it reminds me, like when I first started marketing, there was this thing called an integrated marketing campaign, which we don't talk about anymore, but because it sounds boring. But that's what it is. It's a marketing campaign is across lots of different channels, and it is the combination of those channels and the combination of those activities that actually produces the result. It's not one thing, it's not even 3 or 4 things. It's the what is it they call it, the not exponential, but the sort of the culmination of all those things together, working together, that actually produces the result. And yeah, that again is, going back to attribution. It's not one thing, it's lots of different things.
This is one of my pet peeves, and I've actually stopped using the word campaign, which is really sad. But I have stopped using the word campaign because of this, because it kind of generates so many different, like everyone, if you say campaign to 10 different people, you'll get 10 different answers, right? So that's kind of why I've sort of stopped saying it. But yeah, no, it's so, yeah, there's in my view, and I'm a bit old-fashioned like that as well, a campaign, a proper campaign is an integrated campaign. It's a set of activities that are spread across different channels, because that's how people buy. You don't just look at something on LinkedIn or whatever and think, oh, I'm gonna buy that today because I've just seen this one thing. You've seen it across 3 or 4 different channels. That's all built up. And to your point, in that kind of what you were saying earlier about the memory and the subconscious, it's always kind of like just adding, isn't it? Like little pieces to a puzzle. And then suddenly you sort of have that realization or the decision. But I think you've already answered this. And just a minute ago when you were saying about that, I love what you were saying about the combination of start off with kind of the data that you've got and then build the kind of the art bit on top of that. But I have to, just to be clear, to ask this question, if there were marketing leaders out there that were, really struggling with this, and they did need kind of somewhere to start, where would you, if you kind of were sitting next to somebody now, like where would you start? What would you kind of urge them to do to sort of start to make sense of their attribution?
Well, start with just Google Analytics. You can actually get a heck of a lot of data out of Google Analytics, or if you've got something like, the website that my team manage at the moment is in HubSpot, and you can get a heck of a lot of analytics out of that. Now, yes, I know people will argue that, oh, the data's not correct, or yes, we can see the discrepancy between HubSpot and Google Analytics, fair enough, but it'll give you enough data to go on to be able to see, okay, even at a very tactical level, where is my website traffic coming from? What channels is it coming from? What's roughly working? What's roughly not working? Just so that you can, maybe if you've got lots and lots of different channels, then you can start to maybe bring it down, condense it to a few and just focus on those few that you are working. The other thing to do is run experiments. So if you've got lots and lots of channels working, turn one of them off. Does that make a difference? Turn 5 of them off. Does that make a difference? And do that sort of approach of, testing, experimenting over a few weeks or a couple of months. But you don't need fancy attribution software to be able to do that. You can find most of your data out of something as simple as Google Analytics or your website analytics. Or if you're running activity on a social platform, those platforms have got enough analytics, enough data for you to be able to then roughly work out, is it showing me, is it proving or disproving a hypothesis that I had about this channel or about this audience? So start with something simple like that and just let it sort of steer you in the right direction at least. And then from there, try and sort of build up a bit more of a qualitative picture, I suppose, from talking to customers, talking to other marketers, talking to, your sales team, talking to, your customer experience team, and filling in the gaps that you might have with more sort of human inputs, human research, human analysis.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that. And it's really interesting. Like you said that you asked a kind of a couple of good questions, and maybe that's kind of the place to sort of start as well then, right? Is like write down what those questions are, because sometimes it's quite easy, isn't it, once you start digging in data. I know I'm terrible because I love data and I could sit there and just crunch numbers all day. I love it. But I know I take myself down rabbit holes, and then you sort of think, well, why am I here? What am I looking? This is all really useful and interesting, but I'm not quite sure what I wanted to answer. So yeah, keep sort of be true to yourself, I suppose, by just writing down those questions and say, you said the really important ones there, like where's my traffic coming from? Like what is the source of these leads? What are the customers kind of feeling about our brand, or, the kind of the trust and those sorts of things. And you can look for the sources of those answers, the answers to those questions. So yeah.
Just don't obsess about it too much. That's the thing, is we can get so wrapped up in like diving too far into data and attribution. I was reading an article the other day, and it was explaining 6 different types of attribution, and I can't even remember what they were all called. So there was obviously like last click, first click, so fair enough. But then they had one called position-based attribution, I think it was called, and time decay attribution. And I just thought, oh, for goodness sake, we don't need to go this far with this sort of stuff. It's just get a rough idea and then use common sense for the rest of it. But don't obsess.
Like you said, the testing is now. I remember when we sat on a round table, didn't we? Like a while back, and I picked up something from that really interesting, where everyone was saying there was 2 main messages, which is don't to focus on sort of too many channels. Pick a kind of few channels from the analysis that you suggested, what you've done, which ones are kind of working or seem to be working the most. Focus on those channels, but have that little 10% or whatever it is of your budget set aside for the experiments. And the experiments that you're doing, experiment with the new channels, but obviously you're testing with the data there, and if that turns out to be really good, you can swap them out, I don't know, or whatever, or add them in, depending on what you want to do. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting. But we've come up to, I could see this is one of those topics. And do you know what? I'd love to I need to go back and listen to this episode, because you'll hear the tone of my voice go from like almost a little bit like nervous and frantic, because when anybody says attribution to me, like it does, my heart starts racing. But I've had the therapy today. You really calmed me down.
I think we both had the therapy session. Yeah. Do you know what I would say though is, can we just stop using the word attribution? that would be my dream, is just let's just stop using it, because it's
if it's a triggering word.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, let's be kind to ourselves. Okay, no, I love that. Just the questions. It's the questions that we all have, and it's fine to have those questions all the time. Everybody does in every department, not just marketing. Like, so yeah, that's a great place to finish off. Thank you so much, Emma. It's been such a great discussion. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope I'm sure everybody else or the listeners will have as well. So thank you.
No, thank you, Lucy. And yeah, I'm glad we were able to maybe not come up with an answer, but at least sort of come up with a better path forward for that thing called attribution.
Exactly, that thing, the word that will no longer be spoken.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.